that's my thank yous out the way. The event obviously is called Emergence Empowerment, and the reason I called it Emergence Empowerment is because I think language is so powerful, first of all, and I feel that I really wanted to invite people to feel into the themes that we discussed today and the things that are shared in the documentary, because we live in such a information-strong society. It's like we always are just processing words mentally and just really just thinking about them mentally and not actually like feeling into them. So I want to invite people to really feel into the themes that we discussed this evening. And when I was looking at when I was looking at the emergence of the word emerge and where it came from, it means to rise from, to rise. And somebody I've watched rise these past few years is sat here right next to me. I've been connected with Kelechi since 2018. We met in London, and I've watched her rise. And so it's an honor to have you here in Liverpool. And the thing that fascinates me about you is how multifaceted you are and the many hats that you wear. You know, from building a children's home in Nigeria recently to, you know, script writing, playwriting, being an author of a novel, being a cultural commentator. You really do it all. You are a CEO of a pole studio. You do work for racial equality. There's just so much that you do. So could you maybe tell us a bit about, you know, your rise and your emergence and the work that you do?
Thank you, Elliss, and congratulations for the documentary, and congratulations for all of this and everything that you've been doing and how you have been emerging as well and rising. I feel that, for me personally, I can't really talk about rising without talking about burning. I think that there is something about the death and rebirth process in life that I'm becoming better acquainted with and going on a journey in that way, because for all of the rising that people have seen me do throughout the years, there's been a lot of falling, there's been a lot of, I would say, metaphorical dying in order to be reborn. And I think that Western society, and specifically a very capitalist society, doesn't want us to pay much attention to seasons. And life is about seasons, and we see the trees do it every year. Well, climate change. But we see the trees do it every year, and the leaves fall away, and then another season arrives, and then we get new leaves. But somehow we think as humans that we are exempt from that process ourselves. It happens on a microcosmic scale. For me, you know, speaking as somebody with a womb, going through that process in terms of a menstrual cycle, those are also seasons, but we're not encouraged to lean into it, as again, in a capitalist society, because you should just work, work, work. In fact, the things that your body's doing should be seen as an inconvenience because you are not being productive, you are not being a worker in the way that you are required to be in order to uphold this structure. So that's on a microcosmic scale, but then I think in terms of a macrocosm, seeing how we are meant to interact with nature as a whole, because we are also nature. We deny ourselves that, or we have been denied that, so we stop thinking about it so much. So for all of, like I said, for all of the rises, I've had lots of falls. For all of the rebirths, there has to be the deaths. And after every sort of cycle, or when I feel like I'm coming to the end of a cycle, I learn something about myself. So the only way the way I ended up opening my pole dance studio in London was because I had to end working at a white-owned studio in central London, because they seemed to not want to embrace marginalised groups and racially minoritized people who would attend the studio, and so many weird things happened there that it got to a point where I didn't fit anymore. I didn't fit into the mold of what that place was, and I had to go. And prior to that, just slightly prior to that, I opened the studio because I was, going around teaching twerk workshops, and I reached out to a studio in Manchester, a white-owned studio, and the teacher said, "Oh, I don't enjoy your style of twerk," because I sent a video. She said, "When me and my girls twerk, we put our knee pads on and we throw down." And I still have flashbacks of what I saw on their social media page. And that was an ending for me in terms of my naivety that, I know this thing and I want to teach this thing and people are just going to naturally be open to it. It's who would be affected by me going ahead and teaching this thing in the form that it was meant to be taught in the first place. And, I speak about that trigger warning, pregnancy loss. I know that another process of me growing and really understanding grief and mourning was the result of having a miscarriage or experiencing a miscarriage in 2018. But that brought me into it just brought me into a deeper space. I felt like I had to grow up. I thought that I had grown up at that point. I was, 32? But there was a different type of growing up that happened where I became better acquainted with what it is to feel that you've lost something, what it feels like to grieve something, and a new me sort of emerged from that process as well. And I think sometimes in society we glorify what we see as the rise, as the emergence, but really what needs to be celebrated is the underworld that you have to go into for that to happen, and having an understanding of the underworld and having an understanding of the shadow in order that you can understand the light.
Definitely, because it's like, how do you emerge if you don't have roots? Like, where are you rooted? What are you rooted into? And you said so many great things there, and I was still caught up on your opening sentence, because you said, when I think about emergence, I can't not think about burning. And I just feel like that is so powerful, and burning is a metaphor. I feel that, like, being from Liverpool 8, it's like, and the history of Liverpool 8 is like the fire burns around you, like, so strong, and you really have to hone in on the fire within you burning even stronger than the fire around you. And I've actually got work in the Walker Art Gallery, a part of Samoya Kadira's Conversations exhibition at the moment. It's there till March, and I'm speaking about the elements, and I'm speaking about fire, and I'm speaking about the underworld and the shadow and all these things that you speak about as well. And I feel that, speaking about cycles and seasons, me producing and creating the Delado documentary that we will watch after this conversation actually came from me being in a place of being in the underworld and laying on the floor. And I've been through grief, and I've been through loss, and I've been through mourning, and coming out of that, I really was had a new sense of self, a new sense of life. I started to think about my purpose more and how effective I am. And also, just when you go through loss, it makes you also think about your own mortality as well. And so I was really thinking about what do I need to do now that will make me feel effective, and what would make me feel like I've accomplished something. And there was two things that came into my mind, go back to university and get your master's, which I did. And the second was make a documentary. So then when I was exploring, what can I make a documentary about, the Delado conversation is something that happens in, my family household. So I knew that was a thing, that was something that deserves to be documented, and so that's what I went to do. So I really like how you spoke about cycles and how that affects your emergence and the importance of that.
I think that, as you said there, and congratulations on the master's.
Oh, thank you.
I think, as you said there, it is being aware of the cycles, right? And all of us are going through cycles, all of us are going through seasons, but if on the outside you're being denied, your reality is being denied, that these things are happening, you don't see it. Or we all have our own personal cycles, we all have our own personal seasons and rhythms. And so when we're not doing things to the timeline that society has told us to do things by, we think that we are not doing well, and that maybe we're not living in our purpose. And I think about, your work at the gallery currently, and when you made it to when it's now showing, right? And so to initially have made something and be like, oh, nothing seems to be happening, and only for the time, because everything has its own birth chart, therefore everything has its own lifespan, right? And it's understanding that, and why it's actually very detrimental to us to have these things like, I mean, I get why people have it, so I'm not throwing shade, but things like Forbes 30 under 30. I need to have achieved this by this age. I need to have done this by this age. Why? Why? What does that mean in the grand scheme of things? What does it mean? And usually the things that are being celebrated are financial or just capitalistic in nature. Yeah. It's not really a metric as to who you are and the smaller, perceived smaller victories that you've had in your life. Or in fact, the great victories that nobody ever sees. It's more, how much have you done for the economy? And our bodies and our lives go beyond upholding an economy.
Yeah, and why should we, and I think we're getting to a point in time of we're realizing we are not here to uphold this white patriarchal system. And I think what you said there makes me think about how rest is resistance, and creating this piece of work that we're watching tonight was after I'd been through a period of rest, because I had to rest, the loss that I experienced forced me to rest. That's the only thing that I could do. And so here we are today. And I guess with this Delado project, a key theme was the intergenerational dialogue, and it's something that is very important to me. I think, speaking about roots and emergence, you need roots to be able to emerge. Something I am rooted in, something I practice to be rooted in, is intergenerational dialogue. I love having conversations with people that are older than me. I love asking questions. I love learning. And so that was kind of the theme of this whole project. So I know obviously you're a Yoruba girly, and I wanted to ask you about intergenerational relationships in your culture, and the role of elders and youngers and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. So for those who see my name, they'll be like, she's not Yoruba, she's Igbo. So yeah, my dad was Igbo, my mum's Yoruba, and I grew up with my mum, so I feel like I identify more as Yoruba, but Igbo men hear that and they're like, no, you're from where your father is from. I'm like, all right, calm down, take it easy, calm down. I'm from where they're both from, right? But I think that even that's interesting, where is it decided? How is it decided what our roots are? Our roots, I think about the mycelium and the network, right? And how it just goes out, and then somebody can go, oh, well, that doesn't count because it's not your father's side. Whereas actually all of it counts, all of it is connecting you to so many different things, so it matters. But I bring that up to bring up the fact that it's so interesting that within my family, my parents' families and, all of that, I've made a conscious decision to actually have distance from them for no real particular reason. It didn't resonate in the same way. I've chosen my ancestors, not being told by my parents it's this person or it's that person. I've just figured it out intuitively for myself. But specifically, within Yoruba spirituality, specifically Ifa, doing the research and practicing it, being somebody that practices Ifa, when we are doing a consultation with the oracle, when we're consulting Ifa, they trace you through your mother's line, your matriarchal lineage, which would, to me, would make sense. Like, where did you emerge from, right? So, of course, I would go to there, your incubator, where you were grown, where every part of you was put together. I would trace you that way, not to discount, the contribution of your father, but it would go through your matriarchal lineage. So if you were trying to find out something about yourself, you would say your name and then your mother's name to identify yourself in the cosmos. So I've just found that really interesting, and how much I've learned about myself and learned about my place in the world through Yoruba spirituality, and therefore understanding how important it has been when we consider the transatlantic enslavement of African people, of black people, and how Ifa, Yoruba spirituality, travelled with the people who were snatched from what they knew and taken to, different lands, and how they kept these practices alive, and that it became an amalgamation of other belief systems and all of these things. But I feel like those belief systems were the reasons that we were able to survive, having something of our own to hold on tightly to. And so considering that has helped me to emerge in particular ways. So when you mentioned about your purpose, I started thinking about purpose recently and thinking, what if there is no purpose for me per se? A purpose with a capital P, just like lots of purposes, and one of those being just live. Like, you have a chance to live, so do it. But by living, and to live truthfully, because I think that that's important, to then live truthfully, to be honest with oneself, to be truthful to oneself, requires that then you are able to identify the truth about, or the many truths about what surrounds you, and honouring the truths of other people, even if it's not your own personal truth. So in realising that I have many purposes, and I'm every day deciding to tap into different ones, but the main purpose being to be truthful to myself. And by design, I'm therefore truthful with other people. So Yoruba spirituality has helped me with that, has helped me with the concept of Iwapele, which is to move through life with a calmer disposition. That's not natural to me. I mean, SE15 South London, Peckham all day, every day. So, so it's not natural to me. And I say that in jest, like, obviously with childhood abuse and things like that, all of these things contributed to me being rather hypervigilant and being a particular way. And so I had to understand that Iwapele is also part of truth, understanding that this is who I am. I can go from 0 to 100 very quickly, and that's okay, because it's needed in certain circumstances, but not in every circumstance, but it's needed. And I don't need to shame myself for the fact that I know how to pop off and pop off heavy very quickly, right? It's necessary, but I find that isn't, our anger, our burning isn't always encouraged or embraced or nurtured in certain belief systems or in certain societal constructs, when actually it is a part of who we are, and a different Orisha within Yoruba spirituality are representations of that, and representations of nature. So it's brought me closer to living, understanding the journey of my roots and my ancestors in that way, and understanding that I've been gifted this thing. And we don't tend to talk about it in mainstream culture currently, because people will call it juju, they'll call it voodoo, they'll call it all of these things. All of those terms mean nothing to me. Like, you can't move me away from something that I know is so important to us. Audre Lorde talks about it in the Litany for Survival, when she says we were never meant to survive. So it wasn't by accident that these atrocities, these depravities persisted for centuries. It was by design. And so it's by design, therefore, that in your mind, in your psyche, you would move away from that which really does anchor you, really does root you to everything that you're meant to be, because you've been told, forget that means nothing, that's demonic. So thinking about things in that way, it has brought me also closer to like elders that I'm seeing in the community. I can't walk around my area now, so I live still in South London, but closer to Tower Bridge. I can't walk around my area now without greeting the bin men, without greeting the people that are sweeping, without greeting the postmen, because I'm so aware of how many people contribute to me just being here. And so it just goes beyond my immediate family. There are people who I might not even think about in a day-to-day that make it possible for me to be alive and for me to do the things that I'm doing. And to me, that's nature. To me, that's recognizing the energetic ecosystem that we are existing within and playing a part. That's the purpose, playing a part in keeping that ecosystem thriving in the best way. And those who aren't benefiting from the ecosystem because of, systemic and institutional, impact, how can we make things better for them? So that's what it's brought me to. Looking to them, looking to the dead has brought me into actually knowing how to live.
I love that. I really love that. And, you speak about being true to yourself and, if you need to pop off, you will pop off. It's about being a clear channel, having that clearness through your mind and heart, which requires a lot of work to do, to actively engage with yourself and work through things and filter through things and sit with them and heal. And it really does take a lot. And the bottom line is that we need to express ourselves, and something that I've learned, especially moving to London. So I lived in London from 2015 until the very beginning of this year. And one of the main things that it allowed me to do was to express myself. It allowed me to go on a journey of my expression. And that's something that I had to do in my journey, because if I did not move and I did not express myself, I would have suppressed. I would have suppressed all the things that I did that I'm meant to express. I would have suppressed it. And when you suppress things that you really want to say, when you suppress your desires or your goals or your dreams or your activity that you really want to let out, when you suppress that, it causes depression, it causes low mood, it causes depression. So this cycle of expression, not expressing leading to suppression and then leading to depression is a cycle that, grabs a hold of a lot of us. I'm sure we've all been there at some point where we need to open our mouths and speak, otherwise, it's a wrap. So like you're saying, we need to pop off sometimes.
We do. And all of that still comes down to truth, right? What you are wanting to express is a truth at that point in time as it's true to you. And denying ourselves that, taking ourselves into that double consciousness where we're not quite sure, having to do the double speak, especially in the workplaces. The workplaces that will be like, bring your whole self to work. You change your hairstyle 2 times. 2 times. And then, I didn't recognize you. So you don't want my whole self there. You don't want my whole self. Because if you wanted my whole self, I could roll through with every day I've got a different wig, deal with it. But so it's funny when we're talking about how we bring our whole selves and how we express ourselves. It's like you can express yourself up until this point. I think it was 2020, I really started to think about office culture and how Western society, but I would say specifically capitalist society, is so unimaginative. Like the prison system looks like, the plantation looks like the school system, which looks like the prison system, which looks like the office, the workplace. You have the people who are the workers. Okay, these, the enslaved were not paid, right? But you have these people who are the workers, but really what they're being paid in exchange for their life, because it's their life that they're given, it's 5 days out of 7 of their life to be paid. There's not enough that you could pay someone for how much life you're taking from them, right? But then you do that. And then you've got the overseer, which you would have had on a plantation, which is the line managers, the supervisors, watching over the workers so they can report back to the higher-ups, the people in the house, to be like, they're doing the work. And but you're not in a better position than me. You probably get a few £1,000s more, and you're still miserable, you know. So all of these things are going on, and we get that in the school system as well. Hence the school to prison pipeline. It's not imaginative. And I started to think during 2020, like even the idea of wearing suits to work. What if I wanted to wear one pom-pom short? What happens? Like, who gets to decide what is professional? Because I'm still going to come through and I'm still going to deliver on the KPIs and whatever. But now, because my short is here, there is a problem. Because I'm coming one crop top, there is a problem. And it's winter. Why? What's the problem? Like, that's what I want to wear. So it's how, like, an individuality is not encouraged within, you know, the true expression of self is not actually encouraged in these places where we're expected to be productive. Even the idea of like, oh, working 9 to 5. I know that my actual rhythm is I work better at nighttime. I really come alive, like mentally at nighttime. When I was writing Edge of Here, the short story collection, I did most of my writing at night. Practically speaking, that's when I managed to get my son to bed, and so I could write. But for me, naturally, I do more at night time. In the daytime, I tend to kind of go for a run, chill, really take in the sunlight. But then when the sun goes down, then I'm ready to work. How would I ever function in that sort of corporate system then? Unless I was, I don't know, doing some kind of work that required talking to people overseas. There are just so many parts of it that just doesn't feel natural to us, that we're not telling the truth. And what you mentioned about depression is so important, because when we consider epigenetics, the fact that your cells change, they mutate based on what you experience and what you're feeling, right? And if you're feeling that extreme trauma over decades and centuries, your cells have changed, and then you pass on those cells to the children that you birth. And so when we talk about generational trauma, that is really what we're talking about, the fact that that was passed on, and some people might feel down, they might have a melancholic sort of demeanor to them, and they can't really pinpoint why, but it's because they're carrying the sadness that came before them. And so more than ever, that's why it's important to express yourself. And we also see that women, but specifically black women, are disproportionately represented, or they're overrepresented when it comes to autoimmune diseases because of the repression, the suppression of the feelings that they consider to be negative, like the anger, all of these things, not feeling it, putting it to the side because you need to be the strong black woman. Strong black woman is killing my people. Like, we can't, there's only so much that you can be, and so long that you can be strong for. And, you know, they talk about the fact that catharsis is the beginning of healing. So to express these things is merely the beginning of the healing. Once you're able to express them and, as you say, clear the channel, then you have space for joy. Ever since I've been comfortable with expressing my rage in a constructive way, right? I've had more space for joy. So when I laugh, I really laugh. I mean that laugh, you know? I mean it with my whole chest. But that could only have happened if I released the other things that were constricting my chest, that was constricting my heart.
You know, I always say about you, you laugh with your body, like, her whole body shakes when she laughs. I'm like, I want to be like that. I want to laugh like that.
So I said I laugh like Muttley in Wacky Racing.
Yeah, no, you hit so many points there, you know, and I think the bottom line all comes back to these white patriarchal Western structures, you know, and I feel like, you know, is us expressing our authenticity, is that alone starting to like unpick and send out a frequency that is, you know, overpowering these structures. And yeah, I just feel like there's so many people in this room who do work to express themselves, but also express others as well, and all different forms of expression. Creative expression has so many different forms. And yeah, I just want to highlight that because it is sending out a frequency that is dismantling these structures that we have to live in. And it's also just avoiding that cycle of suppression and depression for so many people. And I hope, you know, as we continue and as the generations come and come and come, you know, expression is something that we have community hubs for and homes for and places to do all of that stuff. And so the next part of our conversation, as we, come to an end slowly, I want to speak about Liverpool's energy. Could you click to the next slide, please? And could you click to the next slide, please? Anyway, it will click now. And I want to speak about Liverpool's energy because is it? Okay. So I know that looks mad confusing, but I'll get to that in a second. But the reason I want to speak about Liverpool's energy is because I've lived in London and I've travelled across the UK and I've travelled across the world. I have that privilege, and there's something about the energy in Liverpool. I love it, but at the same time, it can be a bit heavy. Mm-hmm. It can be very heavy as well. And I, throughout my adulthood so far, I've did a lot of work to integrate with a spiritual perspective mm-hmm. of everything. And so within that spiritual perspective of everything comes the understanding of energy, and how everything is energy and how karma is real and everything has an energy body. And so when I think about Liverpool, and I think about its strong hand in the transatlantic slave trade, ooh. And it was responsible for building the ships that shipped 1.5 million enslaved African people to, the Caribbean and to the Americas. And I think about that. So I think about that energetic experience and what that means for this place energetically. But we have to then take it further, because even when the slave trade was abolished, Liverpool still benefited from imperialism. It still benefited from its stake in colonialism. Mm-hmm. And it was like, even after slavery was abolished, I think around like 1840, Liverpool made like £14 million in profit from cotton. 14 million in the 1800s, which is a lot of money. And so I think we have to really, what I like to do is really think about the energy of that and what that means energetically for us who are born here, for my elders who are born here in the room as well. And so that all brings me to then saying it was in 1880 that Liverpool got city status. So this is after it had that strong hand and that stake in the transatlantic slave trade, after it made all that profit, after it had all that, it then got granted city status. And so, I'm just going to move over here a second. Okay, great. And so this is an astrology chart, because one thing about me and Kelechi, we love astrology. Yes. And we use astrology, like you can use it as a storytelling lens mm-hmm. as well. And so what you can see in the red circle at the bottom of the screen is what I kind of want to focus on. And so that what we're seeing is different planets in the sign of Taurus. So that green symbol at the bottom of the circle indicates Taurus, and the black symbols indicate planets. Okay, so Liverpool was established in May of 1880 as a city, so it means the sun was in Taurus. So Liverpool as a city is a Taurus. Big up my Tauruses. This is nothing against y'all, but big up my Tauruses. My sisters are Tauruses, so nothing against y'all. But when we're looking here, we're also seeing these two archetypes in astrology, which is Neptune and Chiron, and they're very close together. If you can see the numbers, if you can see the number 13 and 12, that's Neptune and Chiron. Chiron looks like a key, and Neptune is to the left of the key, and it looks like a spade. And when we look at astrology, we look at Neptune being truth, mm-hmm. Higher, deeper spiritual truth, but also illusion. And when we look at Chiron, we look at the wounds. We're looking at the wounds. We're looking at where we are called to heal, where we individuals are called to heal, or in this case, where a place is called to heal. We're looking at the wounds that are inflicted on that place. And what is so interesting is that Taurus is the first earth sign. It's about materiality. It's about possessions. And Neptune being the truth and Chiron being the wounds, when we look at this chart in 1880, you're seeing, just through that, as astrologers, we're seeing Liverpool's stake in the transatlantic slave trade and the harm and the wounds that it inflicted, which means the city carries these wounds. It's part of the truth that the city carries. And so, from your perspective, can you speak on that as well?
Definitely. So you've mentioned about Taurus. So the sign of Taurus, we're thinking about soil, we're thinking about land, we're thinking about food, we're thinking about all of these things, and it being a slow-moving energy, being an earth sign, it's a slow-moving energy. And so the fact that Liverpool being granted that status as a city on that date, therefore giving us this chart, would tell us, therefore, that where it got its identity from was luxury goods and, like I said, the soil, plantations, food, the plantations, all of these things. You can see the story that's beginning to be told based on this chart. And as Elliss mentioned, we've got Neptune being about, the higher truths and spirituality, as well as illusion, and also addictions and things like that. And we've got Chiron. Chiron, in terms of mythology, wasn't fully human. And then when you think about the basis that was needed for the transatlantic enslavement of African people, it needed to be justified on a basis that, the Africans aren't really human. So we could take Chiron to really represent Black people, just in this case, as in terms of astrology being a language. You don't have to really think about astrology as a belief system. I'm not asking you to believe in astrology, same way I'm not asking you to believe in French. Somebody either speaks it or they don't. You either understand it or you don't, right? So, but I can translate what I see and see if, it resonates with you. So in this case, we could see Chiron as Black people, as African people in this case, and Neptune also ruling the seas, right? How, because of what happened with the seas and Black people gave us Liverpool's identity initially. Carolus Linnaeus in 1735 wrote Systema Natura, and he was part of the Enlightenment period where these educated, elite white men got together and just decided things. They just decided things, and then we've gone with it ever since, right? And they decided, things regarding psychotherapy. They just decided lots of things. One of the things that Carolus Linnaeus did was naming dinosaurs. And so they were like, because you're so sick at naming dinosaurs, why don't you just name some people? And so he talked about the Homo Ifa and the Homo Europaeus. And the Homo Ifa would be the Africans, the Black person, the Black people, and that they were angry, that they liked to steal, that they weren't intelligent, that they were ugly, they loved sex a lot. Those were the characteristics that he gave in terms of categorizing the Homo Ifa. And the Homo Europaeus was, very intelligent, beautiful, so calm in disposition, just wonderful, so smart, God, wow, smart. And although the transatlantic slave trade had already been taking place by this point, you could really see an uptick around that point, because it was just like, wait, they're not human, let's go for it, and let's take their lands as well. And so when I think about that, I think about how these archetypes, these stereotypes were decided centuries ago, and unimaginatively, we are still being subjected to the consequences of those stereotypes now. And so we are the wounded healer, because when you think about capitalism and you think about Black culture with a B and a capital B and a C, we drive culture. Black people drive culture. Any little dances. Remember when the TikTokers, the black ones, just decided they were going to stop dancing, and then people were just staring. They didn't know what to do after that because they had no one to steal from, right? I told you the story about the pole dance studio in Manchester, and I reached out, wanting to teach them the origins of twerk, right? Wanting to take them on that journey. And then on their website, they credited Miley Cyrus as being the pioneer of twerk. So, and all I wanted to do was correct it, and they started crying. But I bring that up to say that because of the wounds and how we go about trying to heal the wounds, we also create a culture that then is monetized, and we don't get the profit from that monetization, right? And so when we think about that, and we think about earth signs, as Taurus is an earth sign, Virgo and Capricorn are earth signs, they are about money, they are about the material things. And so even that tying with Chiron being not quite human, as Carolus Linnaeus would have had us believe, and having Neptune on that, it all ties in together. But I also wanted to look at very briefly Venus. Venus is the one that's the number 4 at the top, like near the left hand of that circle that looks like a mirror. Venus rules Taurus, right? She's the planetary ruler of the sign of Taurus. And Venus is about beauty, luxury, money, as well as, the divine feminine. And so then I think about how the bodies of black women were very much necessary in terms of propagating this capitalist society, right? And how, even though she's not very close, Venus is not very close to Neptune and Chiron, it still played a role. Stella Dadsy's book, where she talks about, I think it's a kick in the belly, when I think it was Jamaica where the slave merchants were talking about how it seems like the black woman is just kicked across the island to and fro, kicked in the belly. And we think about how the birth or the thriving of capitalism needed black women in order to birth, the workers or those who were enslaved. And so it's no surprise then, obviously not wanting to trigger anyone, why in terms of uprising on the plantations and the revolt, black women were performing, I would say, acts on themselves to deny the enslavers, the opportunity to take their children. There is something about that, how the sacrifices that these women had to make in order to be able to push back. So I was recently literally before coming here, a few minutes before coming here today, I was on Talk TV being asked about reparations and whether, Keir Starmer, that everybody wanted so badly, talked about Keir Starmer saying that he doesn't think that we should get financial reparations, that we should just look to the future and think about more pertinent things like climate change, as if climate change isn't disproportionately affecting those who ideally probably need the reparations financially, right? It's all tied in together. You can't extrapolate one from the other, like it's all linked. And so I was explaining that to the host of, that I was talking to earlier, that nothing is separate from anything else. And this is the idea that you wouldn't need to pay reparations, financial reparations, to me is ludicrous, because £17 billion approximately was paid to the enslavers for loss of property. And the HMRC was paying that all the way up until 2015. So I don't get why we would think that we don't need to, think about the families and the generations that would, need to benefit from this, apart from the systemic and institutional changes that we would make then as well. But I felt like it was important to mention women, because I think about, is it James Marion Sims, who's talked about as the godfather of gynecology, and how he came up, he invented the speculum. And the way he was able to invent the speculum is because the enslaved women, the enslaved black women that he had, he would test the prototypes on them without anesthesia. And so the things that we laud as technological advancements or medical advancements in this day and age, at some point, one kind of marginalized woman racially minoritized, whatever the case may be, her body was subjected to bringing those advancements about. So why would we think that there doesn't need to be some kind of emergence of justice? Because in all of the burning that we talked about in terms of a full circle moment, and we even think about Liverpool, when I look at this chart, I definitely see Liverpool. You know, I see so much even with the Mercury in Aries and Saturn in Aries, but the Mercury in Aries, because Scouts are fiery. Fiery. They'll let you know about yourself immediately. And I love that. So there's so many aspects of it that speaks to so many things, but I also think about the Sun newspaper, that when the Liverpudlians decide that they're not having a bar of something, they're absolutely not having a bar of it. And you need to have that energy, because we don't see that energy sometimes in different places. But everybody's had their own uprisings in one way, shape or form. But to get together and over the long term, because Taurus is also about the long game, right? Being an earth sign, saying that this paper, you hate to see us coming because we are not playing with you. There's a tenacity to that. There's a resilience to that. So when we talk about that heavy energy, I think it's that Taurian vibe that it comes from.
Definitely. And, you know, even just seeing Mars sitting in Cancer.
Yes.
Mars in Cancer showing like, oh, Cancer being rules the seas, you know, Mars being violence. Mars is just sitting right there at the bottom of the chart in Cancer. So even that, so yeah, thank you for your input on that. And, you know, summarizing that, you know, we know that Chiron and Neptune, we've established that Chiron is the wounds of the transatlantic slave trade. That Chiron and Neptune is showing this place, its roots, what it's built on, is the wounds of others, okay? So just keep that in mind. And can we go to the next slide, please?
Oh wow, that was quick.
And so this chart is on the day that, with the arrest that led to the riots, the arrest of Leroy Cooper, may he continue to rest in peace. This is the chart on that day of his arrest that led to the uprisings in 1981. And can we see that Chiron is in Taurus again, even though we're in a completely different time now? And do you know how long Chiron takes in each sign? How many years? It's a long time, right?
It's a long time. It's so slow moving.
So, like, this is probably the next time that Chiron went into Taurus, right? Since that time. Yeah. And so, in between that city status and in 1880 and 1981, Chiron has been through every sign. And now it sits back in Taurus. And so, you know, thinking about the uprisings, and, you know, in the documentary you will see I speak to people who lived through it. And so speaking to them, they describe how you could feel something in the air. You could feel that something was going to happen. And I think it's strongly linked to this Chiron being back in Taurus, and then the people who were on, you know, living through the uprisings, they were the channels to heal these wounds of the city, you know. And so if we think about why the uprising happened, you know, bottom line, we can speak about like the marginalization of black people in this city, and how the marginalization was very specific and unique to Liverpool 8 in comparison to other places. And I think it's just, when I seen both of them, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense to me. How can I translate this to other people?
To an audience.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting because in 1880, right, we had Mars in Cancer. So that's the one at the bottom here. So if you could see a circle with a dot now, and then you see the two, they look like speech bubbles down here in blue, right? So that's the sign of Cancer. And then we've got the Sun in there this time, which is that circle with the dot in the middle, instead of Mars. Isn't it interesting that you mentioned Mars being about like the violence in the seas, right? But then we've got the Sun there now, where people are insisting that it's been centuries. This is now our home because the sun represents the ego, the self, identity, life force, and Cancer usually is a sign that rules the home as well as seas. And people being like, well, this is our home. You can't continue to treat us like second-class citizens when this is literally our home and we've got generational value here. Like, what is going on? So that's been shown there, I would say. And then also, we've got if you look up there, the sign of Libra in the gold, and then you've got at the bottom, you've got the number 2, and then you've got something that looks like a 2 and a line down it. That's Jupiter, right? And Jupiter in Libra, again, another sign ruled by Venus, right? So this is about justice. We're coming back to justice. We're coming back to a sense of balance. And I think that sometimes we have to, you know, when I mentioned about popping off and popping off heavy, sometimes you need to pop off and pop off heavy to let people know what time it is. Because until you do, you can't. Was it Martin Luther King? Somebody that talks about nobody has ever gotten their freedom from trying to appeal to the goodness of their oppressor. I'm paraphrasing badly, but it is that, like, you can go through every form, every policy, do all of these petitions, but there comes a point where enough is enough. And I feel like this is what we're seeing across the globe at the moment. People are getting to the point where enough is enough. And Chiron being in Taurus is that reminder of that. And now, in terms of now in the present, Chiron is currently in Aries. Aries rules war, the military. It rules, I guess, aggression, but at the same time, surgical things as well, sports, anything physical. Chiron is currently there. So it's asking us to heal the self. After we've done all of this work about thinking about identity and our value, because Taurus is about value as well, it's about now we're at a point where we're having to consider, like, who are we? With our wound and without our wounds, who are we?
Yeah. Literally. And yeah, I mean, I'm just glad that we can provide, like, a different perspective to the truths and the facts that we know, like, of this city. And that's what I really wanted to do here. And it's just, to me, it's just mind-blowing seeing that connection of Chiron in Taurus in 1880, and we're really looking at the wounds that the city inflicted. And then when we jump to 1981 and Taurus is still there, we're seeing the people of Liverpool attempting to heal those wounds, and yeah, it's just...
So who knows maths? When is Chiron in Taurus again? It was there in 1880, then it was back in 1981. Huh? 2082.
Yeah, she counted in the hundreds, I think.
Okay. Just letting you know if you're in Liverpool around that time.
But wait, because Chiron is going to move into Taurus very soon, no?
No, is it? No, it's got a minute still in Aries.
Yeah.
It's got a minute.
But the next sign.
Yeah, then the next sign.
The next sign after Aries is Taurus. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So I guess now time check. Yeah, I guess now we can take some questions and answers, and then I'll introduce the documentary and we'll watch it. So maybe if we take like 3
questions, okay.
3 to 5 questions, depending on the length of them.
3 to 5.
Yeah, can we have a mic at the front here, please?
Thank you very much. I'm impressed by your knowledge of astrology, and I'm interested in how, with your knowledge and belief in Ifa, how they relate.
I love this so much with all of my heart, because everything is everything, and when, in terms of the pantheon of Yoruba cosmology, when we talk about Olodumare, everything is created for this purpose. Everything is created in order to guide us. We were never left here alone. We are part of everything, and everything is a part of us. The same particles, molecules that make up everything that we're interacting with now also exists in the universe as a whole. So that we are constantly in dialogue with life. We are constantly in dialogue with life. And I think that, unfortunately, certain things have happened in terms of colonizing our mentality to make us think that we are separate from it and we shouldn't look to certain things for not necessarily even guidance, but more of an understanding of the world. I look at flowers, I look at trees, I look at the sea life that we can see, and I just think, wow, this is incredible. Everything is so divinely orchestrated. Even if you wanted to say that it's just pure chaos, it's the most incredible chaos possible. This is amazing to me, and we are a part of that. We are also just this incredible, intricate design, as is the cosmos as well. So everything goes together because everything was created for that. And it's sad that we, again, I keep bringing it back to capitalism and white supremacist heteropatriarchy, that we've been given so much to enjoy and experience whilst we have this time on earth, but then we're charging people for water. Somebody really looked at the beauty of this earth and went, $5.99. We're denying ourselves the opportunity to really experience life as it's meant to be lived because of capitalism, really. And if we were to step aside from that and reimagine what life could be for us, we would be able to enjoy and note things like this and note these sort of patterns and go, hey, it looks like this is about to happen. Because if you turned on your TV and then you were told, oh yeah, so there's going to be whatever chance of rain, likely, unless you just like to move mad, you would take an umbrella, because you've been told that something's about to happen. But then we don't think about that in terms of an astrological weather forecast as well. That this looks, we literally just said, oh, well, the last time we saw Chiron in Taurus in 1880, that came at this point after all of this, all of these atrocities. Then we said, oh, we saw Chiron in Taurus again in 1981, and then this happened. So if we can see a pattern, why would we not pay attention to the next time that pattern is about to, repeat itself? And what can we do to mitigate the effects of that? We're literally given all of the tools so we can have a better experience on this earth. And because of colonialism, imperialism, capitalism, we deny ourselves the opportunity to use those tools because somebody's going to call us demonic. I feel like it's really high time that we wake up as people, really.
Can we have a microphone? I think it's row D or E. F.
Hi. I'm just very grateful, firstly, for all, I'm here in the middle, I know you're searching, for everything you've said, and thank you for making this so accessible for people who maybe don't know about this stuff. It's really incredible, and speaking about truth, and I think Scousers are very direct. So you spoke earlier about how you've managed to find healthy ways to express rage, and I'm really interested and curious about that. And I just wondered if you could speak a bit more about, some might be very personal to you, but I think it's something we could all learn from.
Yeah, no, definitely. Rage is my bag. I love it so much. Because there's righteous rage, and there's so much happening in the world right now that it's funny the way that rage and resistance is kind of vilified in society. You resist, and it's just like, why are you resisting? You should let us beat you up some more. And those throughout history who have resisted, what has the state done to them for resisting? The Fred Hamptons, the Patrice Lumumbas, what happens when people resist? So I made a video about that the other day that I just started considering why people might be scared to even express rage and to think about how their rage can be used constructively because they've seen what happens to other people when they do that. But if we don't all do it and do it together, then we'll never get anywhere, really. So for me, one of my things, from a physical perspective, is that I run. I try to run like every morning if I can, or every other morning, because it helps me to clear the excess energy, and then I'm able to think a bit more clearly. But obviously I'm able to do that from not being physically disabled, so I'm able to do these things. So another thing that I like to do, and I think is more accessible for a lot of people, is breath work. So breathing in through the nose, out through the nose, and like doing that 100 times in the morning, just like doing that, just to get the internal fire going as well, to balance out what else is happening with my system. And I feel like for some people it's journaling. I just talk. I feel like it's important to use the throat chakra. So I've had a podcast for a number of years, and there I've been sharing all of the things I see in the world. It's important to speak your truth. Well, mine's called Say Your Mind, but it's important to speak your truth because it helps you to find those who are aligned with you as well. There is so much good in finding community, that as somebody, people who can see you, and when you're expressing your rage, they don't get scared, they don't tell you to shut it down, they don't tell you to be more quiet, they understand and they hold space for that, they're not shaken by it. It's important to have those people, and I feel like I've got a couple of those people, which really, really helps me from a mental health perspective. For a while, therapy helped me in terms of talking therapy, but that only went so far because I feel like I'm rather cerebral. So I can intellectualize a lot of things, right? And so I'd be speaking to the therapist and I'm like, I am so good at this. And that's not the point. It's not, you're not meant to go and win therapy. So moving away from that and really coming into my body. So that's why I felt it important to teach twerk, moving the sacral as well, because for a lot of us, regardless of gender, that is where we trap a lot of the things that we do not want to feel. It's all in our sacral, like our groin region. We keep a lot of pain there, and it's important to move that area. You don't have to necessarily dance, but if you dance, that would be good too. But moving the area back and forth and round to help the energy move through you is so important as well. I feel like there are so many different things that people can do. Some people prefer to draw it out. I like martial arts, so whether it's Muay Thai or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I controlled violence or controlled aggression. I like those sorts of things where I can just get out and choke people. So weight training, for me, based on just the kind of person I am, a lot of the things that I do to help me move my rage comes through in terms of physicality. Not everybody's is the same. Some people prefer to sing it out or to write poetry. It's so different for different people, but it's important to find a channel for you. Some people it's finding a forest and screaming their lungs out. Whatever it is, just do it. For some people it's knitting. Rage moves through us differently, but we have to acknowledge that it's there and then let it move. I think that that's the most important thing. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Good evening, and good evening to everyone here. Thank you very much.
Where are you? Oh, I can see you.
So, if you was walking down the street and you turn a corner and you see someone brown or black being attacked by the police, and what about for the feedback though? Engineer, please help. What would you want to do? What would you do? And what would you recommend us younger people if we ever came across such a situation?
Yeah, I think it's different for each person. I've had situations before, not necessarily seeing somebody being attacked by police, right? But a black boy being stopped and searched. Right, and it was I think the most recent one was at London Bridge Station, and they stopped him. Obviously, he's gotten upset because he's been stopped for no reason. So he said something, I don't know, he said some kind of slur to the police officers, and then they've gone, oh, now you said something and that's a hate crime. But you provoked him. He was going about his business and you provoked him, so then they said, oh, they were going to arrest him. And so myself and two other women, one white woman, which was very important, being in that situation. We just stood there with the boy the whole time, like just stood there, and it just made their job much harder, and they had to let him go because there was no justification for what they were doing. And I got my phone out and I went on Instagram Live immediately, and I was just recording the whole thing, recording the police officers there, recording the whole thing, not showing the identity of the boy, but making sure that I was recording, because suddenly they started moving different when it was like, oh, there's footage of this that's happening. The reason I say that is that sometimes we might not be able to get physically involved in something, because then they'll say that you're attacking a police officer, right? But we can bear witness. It's so important to be able to bear witness. So many, unfortunately, I have to use the term so many of the atrocities that we've seen committed by the state, we've only been able to see because someone got their phone out and recorded it. When I think about George Floyd, when I think about so many like different situations, it's because somebody recorded it, so there was evidence. Because when there's no evidence, then it's your word against the police officers, and frankly speaking, the state will go with the police officers more than likely.
Yeah,
till this date, and I'm coming to a particular point, till this date, no on-duty police officer has been convicted of murder.
So
right? No on-duty police officer. Manslaughter, we got like 4, I would say. But in terms of murder as a conviction, no. And why do I bring that up? Because, again, it's about bearing witness, right? In the zeitgeist at the moment, we're talking about Chris Kaba. And people are watching different videos, and they're like, yeah, but wasn't he in a club? I don't know how you all managed to recognize him with that, but you know, wasn't he in a club and he was holding a gun and he was doing this and he was doing that? Okay, I'm not here to argue with you about the kind of person that somebody was. That's not my actual business for now. I'm talking to you about principle. On principle, they did not know that it was Chris Kaba in the car, right? So if I do not know the identity of somebody, where do I get the goal to be able to, sorry, trigger warning, state violence, to shoot them in the head through the windscreen? And then people say, yeah, but the car was involved in a robbery the day before. No, the car wasn't. The car wasn't directly involved. And even then, there are so many other things that you can do to stop somebody, and it wasn't that. And I went to the trial. So I attended the trial, and they kept playing the video over and over and over of that moment when it happened. And what they're showing on TV in little clips, decontextualized, and what actually happened is so wild to me, because it's about manufacturing consent from the public that in some way this black boy, because he was 24 years old, this young black man deserved to have his life taken by a random officer. And I just don't believe that that's fair. I don't believe that that's okay. So for me, going back to the example that you gave, whilst I wasn't there with Chris, it's still important for me to bear witness and to use my platforms and any avenues that I have to say that this was not okay. And we can't allow ourselves to be trapped by respectability politics and say, oh yeah, but wasn't he a gang member? Wasn't he? Okay, whatever. The fact of the matter is, based on principle, that should not have happened. There was so... Don't we say in terms of like the European Convention of Human Rights, like you should have a right to a fair trial? So the officer got a trial, but Chris didn't because he got shot in the head. So it's important for us as people to not be scared of the police, to really understand that we are each other's stewards. Like when we talk about I am my brother's keeper, we are responsible to each other. And if we don't see each other, if we don't bear witness when something wild is happening to each other and we ignore it because we've been conditioned to believe that, oh, well, that person's of a certain faction of society and they're bad. So I have to understand that some things need to be done for me. It's not being done for your own good. The smear campaign that the newspapers or the media is currently running about Chris Kaba, to me, I think it's disgusting, and it's not new because they do it all across the globe. Anytime a black person's life is taken by the police or by the state, they'll give you some kind of he was no angel or something like that. Stephen Lawrence was also, killed. He was killed by white racists. He wasn't killed by the police. But what did the police do to help the family? when that happened? Hardly anything. In fact, the media ran a smear campaign to vilify the family and take the blame away from the police. If we understand the conception or the inception of the police in the first place, we understand that it's an elitist institution, or it's an institution that was created to support the elite and to protect the interests, to serve and protect the interests of the elite. It wasn't created to protect you. We protect each other. That's why community is so important. And so we need to consider that back to your question, if I were to see somebody, even if I can't physically get involved, I'm going to stand there and bear witness, because somebody has to see what's happening to us. Otherwise, it will continue to happen in the shadows, and it will be surprised when all of us disappear.
Mm-hmm. So Miss, thank you. Like, you're saying, I hear what you're saying, I fully hear what you're saying. I feel like the question's not answered explicitly though. You said we shouldn't be scared of the police. Mm-hmm. And like sometimes in the fantasies that occur in my head, from the trauma that I see us people go through, I say to myself sometimes, if I ever in my life, like when I'm seeing these things on the phone, like of a brother or a sister being violated by like authorities, I say, if I was there, I wouldn't be recording. Like I would want to get involved. I would want to be like one of 5 or 6 that start a team. You get me? Like over there in Alabama, when you get me, it turned into a whole superhero story. You know what I'm saying? When like we actually take things into our own hands. So like, are you telling me that you would like, if someone's getting choked there, that you would like record it and stand by them, or would you not use like every ounce of strength that you have in your body to like make that difference right there on the spot?
I don't think that
choked. Are we gonna just like record them?
So
instead of stomping on someone?
I'm not saying that your stance is wrong. I can't say that. I can't say that your stance is incorrect. I can't say it's wrong. All I'm saying is that, so when both of you are choked out, who saw it happen?
But we've been seeing this happen from the beginning of their story.
Right. So I think what you're saying, if we come out of that immediate scenario, right, it's about having groups of us who absolutely say we are not standing for this anymore, and collectively saying that this isn't going to happen anymore. But you as an individual in that situation, I'm not saying that you couldn't do anything. I don't know your superhuman strength. I don't know. But I'm not saying that you couldn't do anything, but I'm just saying that practically speaking, in that particular scenario, what could we do?
Defend ourselves.
Right? But if we're talking about on a grander scale, we absolutely should be mobilizing against I'm just going to say it outright. We should be mobilizing against the police as the police is now. We should be mobilizing in one way, shape or form. And there are different organisations that already do this. We've got Tottenham Cop Watch. Like Tottenham in London, they don't play when it comes to this stuff. They do not play. And there are other organisations as well. So I'm sure you've got some in Liverpool. I'm not well versed in the organisations, but some of you might know. It's about building resistance and just saying that you're not going to allow for this to happen. But I hear what you're saying in terms of how you would go about doing things. And I'm not saying it's wrong.
Yeah, thank you for your question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your input. And speaking about resistance and stuff like that, I think that leads us on to the documentary.
Yes.
Because Delado, they did resist in their own way, you know. They did bang the drum and they did dance their feet. So before we watch it, I just want to say, apart from the people that you will see on screen who made the documentary happen, there was also people behind the scenes that this could not have happened without. Michelle Peterkin Walker is one of them. Amber, why can I never say your first name, your surname? Amber Akanu. Yes. Darren Brady, Des Johnson. So I just want to give my gratitude to them. And yeah, let's clap.